My passion is building Carriage homes because they provide real solutions for real families, space, income, and independence. I'm Mike with Chiorando Homes here in Nanaimo, BC. I've been in the industry for 30 plus years and I've built over 60 homes. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know before building your carriage home on Vancouver Island. A carriage home is typically a backyard home. It could be called a laneway home. They're called coach houses. They're typically a smaller house in the backyard. Historically, they were called carriage homes or coach homes as people stored their horse and carriage in there. Once we moved away from horse and carriage to vehicles, people started using them for secondary living spaces, and then we started parking our cars in them and calling them garages. We're seeing a trend back to using them as living spaces as we see higher living costs and kind of a need for more community living, which is great news because in Nanaimo specifically, they've made a shift. A lot of the R1, which is single family residential zones, have changed to R5, which is 3 to 4 unit residential. Previously, there's a few requirements, so only certain lots met the requirement to build a carriage home. It had to be a corner lot, it had to be about 8,600 square feet, or it had to have a lane in the back. Now, with the shift from R1 to R5, all those requirements are gone and pretty much any lot, I think it's greater than 5,000 square feet, is allowed to have a carriage home. It's actually allowed to have 3 to 4 units. So there's different ways we can create that density, but for a lot of people, a carriage home is a great way to add another space in the backyard. The maximum size of a carriage home has actually increased. It used to be about 962 square feet, and now it's about 1,076. That is about an extra 110 square feet, which could be an extra bedroom. So now the previous notion was that carriage homes were tiny backyard homes, maybe not very useful, but now with the size increase, we could easily get a 3-bedroom home in there. Before we go further in the video, let me tell you why to build a carriage home. So the first reason could be for your aging parents. There's a lot of families, it's the baby boomer age is like looking to downsize, looking for maybe some assisted living, and they own these large houses. So to me, it makes sense that we build a carriage home in the backyard. The aging parents move into the carriage home and their kids and possibly grandkids move into the house and therefore are close by to provide some care and just some closeness as they're getting older. Another reason could be an Airbnb. There's a lot of seasonal travel here. I know a lot of people that run Airbnbs and they're very successful here on Vancouver Island. So you can build kind of a travel-friendly tourist attraction type carriage home. Maybe you already have a hot tub or an ocean view, which are really attractive points for Airbnb. Another thing that we could use a carriage home for is for our growing kids that are maybe going to move out for the first time. Maybe they're 18, they're looking to get a little independence. Rather than moving out with a buddy and getting into all kinds of trouble, maybe if they move into the backyard where we can keep a close eye on them, they can gain some independence, they can learn some skills, learn to be somewhat detached from their family unit, but still close enough that they can have some support if they need it. Another use could just be a long-term rental. You could rent it out to a family, a couple of students. We're seeing apartment buildings or 2-bedroom apartments renting at over $2,000 a month. I would say a standalone building in a backyard would be much more attractive than an apartment. And the last thing, while those options are providing a means of income and or space for family, the last thing would be personal use. If you wanted to have a shop with a studio above it for yoga or painting or crafting or knitting or any kind of passion that you have. So you're creating this external space on your property to use to live out your passion. And of course, carriage home can also be used as an office, or at least part of the building as an office, with a lot of work from home becoming more prevalent. And as a bonus, if you don't have a garage or principal parking structure already on your property, you can have up to 450 square feet allotted within the carriage home as parking. So you could have a living space of up to 1,076 square feet and a garage space of up to 452 square feet, which combined together is over 1,500 square feet. So that carriage home isn't looking too small anymore. Now that I got my coffee, we can talk about the boring stuff. This is kind of like the pre-planning stage where we look at your property. And mind you, this is not boring. One of my favorite parts is looking at the property and seeing what we're gonna build and how we're gonna fit it. It's almost like a challenge, and that's why I really love this part, because we're taking this pre-existing section of your land and figuring out how we're gonna maximize the efficiency with whatever you wanna do with it. But there is some kind of more tedious stuff involved in that, and that's things like surveys, getting the building plans done, and there's a lot of back and forth in these parts and figuring out little details, and that's where I come in to take all that off your plate and put it on mine, because I've done it 100 times. That's where we pulled together the plan designer, the survey team, to get everything ready to submit to the city for a permit. First, it depends if you already have a survey. If your house is newer, you might already have a survey in hand or on file with the city. If not, then we need to get a surveyor out. We have to reestablish your lot lines, your property corners, and really map out the setbacks and where the building is gonna sit. We would do some pre-plan measuring before we get the surveyor there, because I'm familiar with all the setbacks. We'd scope it out, but then the survey comes and gets it bang on. They put their pins in, we know exactly where we're building. The city requires a survey for any sort of home build. Now that we've got our survey and our plans, our drawings for the house, we go online and we submit an online application for a building permit, which is essentially where I give them a bit of a rundown on what we're building, and they check it over and give us a building permit. Another part of the permitting is determining where the services are running to the property and how we're gonna get them to the carriage home. Sometimes we can tie into existing services of the house if we can find them and intercept them in a place that makes sense. And sometimes we need to run all the way to the street. Sometimes we get lucky and the services are running right along the back of the property and we have a quick, easy tie-in. In some cases, for the pre-planning, we may need to engage with a geotechnical engineer if we need them to comment on drainage. And we also may need to engage with a structural engineer depending on how the building is going together. If we fall within the Part 9 requirements of the code, then we don't need structural engineering. If we're building something a little more elaborate, or maybe with a whole ton of windows, then we're gonna need to engage with the structural engineer. As you can see, even though it's a smaller home, there's still a lot of steps in getting it into the permit process and ready for construction. Now we'll talk about what we do once we've submitted the permit application. While it's processing, because typically it takes 4 to 6, sometimes even 8 weeks. So I will get on finalizing tendered budget, so a very detailed budget, so we have a really good expectation of costs. Before that, I'll do a general budget, of course, to make sure we fall in your doable vicinity of price. But during the permit process, I'll finalize the budget, and I'll also create a construction schedule and start engaging with the chosen trades to make sure that we're on track and ready to go as soon as we get permit in hand. And once the permit is released, then we'll dig a hole and we start the building process from footings, foundation, framing, and all the way into interior finishing. And in a few months, I'll be handing you the keys. The last thing we'll talk about is eligibility. A lot of people will use their equity to build the carriage home. So if you have a good chunk of equity within your home, that could be a way that you can access the funds to build the building. And the bonus for that is that you're actually adding value to your property, typically either the same amount it costs or more value that you're adding than what you're paying for the carriage home. The good news is as well that you're now allowed to mortgage your property up to 95% of the value if you're using the funds to build a secondary suite or a carriage home. At the time of filming this video, our federal government has a secondary suite incentive program. I don't believe it's actually even live yet. What I understand of it is that it's gonna be a 15-year loan at 2% interest, up to $80,000 to put towards the construction of a secondary suite within your building or external buildings such as a carriage house. So another way to know if it's right for you is cost. Without knowing exactly what we're building and seeing your property, I can't obviously give you an exact cost, but I can tell you that I'm building carriage homes for around $350 a square foot. So if we're building a 1,000 square foot carriage home, we're looking at approximately $350,000. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm in Nanaimo, and in Nanaimo, I know that most single family residential lots have went from R1 to R5, and R5 is now 3 to 4 unit residential. If you're sitting on an R5 lot, then you're likely allowed to build a carriage home. And that's just Nanaimo. Surrounding surrounding areas such as Cowichan, Ladysmith, Nanoose, areas like this, they're a little more complicated because there's a lot of bigger properties, farmland, ALR, so it's a little more prescriptive in the fact that I need to look into your exact property. If you're looking for more information on that, you can reach out by email at mike@chiorandohomes.com. Well, that's about all you need to know about building a carriage home on Vancouver Island. If anything came up that I didn't answer, feel free to reach out by email. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to hit subscribe because there's more coming. See you next time.